So this was supposed to be a straightforward install, but it turned out to be one of the most frustrating part of the build so far. Okay, I may be a tad bit dramatic here. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Alan, and I'm currently converting my Ram ProMaster into a tiny home on wheels. In my last video, I covered the installation of the flooring. So at this point in the build, the plan was to extend the cabin a bit, installing the divider wall, and continuing on with the framing. But there are a few things I needed to get done before. For example, installing a heater and feeding wire through from the cabin area to the living area. So I had to get those done before moving forward. I started by removing some of the panels around the seatbelt area and the cabin floor to open everything up. From there, I fed the cable through for the DC to DC charger. I also ran wiring for the heater towards where my distribution panel is going to be. Nothing crazy here, just getting everything routed while I still have access. Once I was done, I shifted focus towards the heater install. This is actually my second time doing this, so going into it, I was planning to follow pretty much the same process as my first build. And just like before, I decided to mount it underneath the passenger seat. I made sure I had all the parts, assembled what I could outside of the van, and started laying everything out. If you're familiar with a Ram ProMaster, there's a horizontal support bar underneath the passenger seat, which meant that I had to elevate the heater so that it could clear that bar. So I purchased a turret mount plate and built a wooden support frame around it, basically creating a raised platform for the heater. Once I had everything, I cut into the floor mat, drilled a hole through the van floor, cleaned up the edges, and sprayed Rust-Oleum paint on the exposed metal to prevent rust. Once the paint dried, I used 3M fire sealant between the floor of the van and the wooden frame, and between the wooden frame and the turret mount plate to seal everything up and make sure no fume could get into the cabin. I then decided to use plus nut to mount everything in place, and this is where things started going sideways. As I was tightening them down, a couple of them just gave out. They started spinning and would not catch anymore, which meant I basically had hardware stuck in the floor and no way to properly secure the heater. Definitely not what I was expecting at this stage. I had to crawl underneath the van with a strong plier and hold the plus nut in place while my brother worked from above to unscrew the bolt. It took some time, but we ended up removing them completely. At that point, I decided to start over. I drilled everything out, sealed the plus nut holes back up, cleaned up the fire sealant that I had already applied, and switched to using the rectangular mounting plate that came with the kit. That meant building a new wooden frame to match the plate and reworking the setup a bit. This time, I just went with bolts and nuts, which is what I used in my first build. And honestly, I probably should have just stuck with that from the beginning. Once everything was mounted properly, I moved on to routing the fuel line, installing the pump, and running the exhaust and intake. I routed the exhaust all the way to the opposite side of the van, just to keep the fume away from the sliding door. After that, I wired everything up and temporarily connected it to the starter battery. And just like that, it turned on, and it worked. I let it run for about 30 minutes just to be sure, and everything checked out. It definitely didn't go as smoothly as I expected, but that's part of the process, especially when building a van. You know, you run into things, you figure it out, you adjust, and you keep going. Anyway, as far as the heater goes, I'll finalize everything once my electrical system is set up. But for now, the heater's in and it's working. Next up, I'll probably start working on this divider wall. So if you want to keep up with the rest of the build, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. In any case, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.